My name is Emma Rodriguez, and at 29 years old, I never imagined I'd be standing outside the tech company my husband and I built together, watching his family destroy everything we'd worked for. David's brilliant mind was taken by a sudden heart attack at just 32, and before his funeral flowers had even wilted, his controlling father Marcus was already trying to push me out of our business. Standing in our empty office as security escorted me out, I heard him sneer, "You were just the designer. The real innovation was always David's." If you've ever been betrayed by family when you needed them most, please hit subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Trust me, you'll want to see how this ends. David and I met during our final semester at Stanford, both enrolled in the competitive computer science program that would shape our futures. I specialized in user interface design and market psychology, while David possessed an almost supernatural ability to understand back-end architecture and system optimization. Our first collaboration was a semester project that earned the highest grade in the class history, but more importantly, it revealed how perfectly our complementary skills meshed together. Our relationship deepened over late nights in the computer lab, debugging code and dreaming about the applications we could build that would actually make a difference in people's lives. David's logical mind balanced my creative instincts, while my understanding of user behavior helped him see beyond pure functionality. We dated for 2 years before David proposed in the exact spot where we'd first met, holding a custom-designed ring he had made with binary code spelling out "forever" engraved inside the band. Despite his family's subtle reservations about our relationship, we married in a small ceremony attended by close friends and classmates. I couldn't help but notice the tight smile on Marcus's face as he watched us exchange vows, or how his wife Patricia kept making pointed comments about David's phase of dating artsy types. By that time, I had established myself as a freelance UX designer with several high-profile clients, while David was making waves at a prestigious tech firm specializing in financial software. Together, we saved enough to launch TechFlow Solutions, a company focused on creating intuitive business management software for small and medium enterprises. I contributed exactly half of our $120,000 startup capital from my design consultancy earnings, a fact that seemed to irritate Marcus whenever it came up in conversation. "Such an unusual arrangement," he would comment with a thin smile at family gatherings. In my day, the husband provided the business capital. What he deliberately overlooked was that beyond the initial investment, I poured countless hours and nearly $80,000 of my personal earnings into developing our software's revolutionary interface design, documenting every receipt and milestone meticulously in what would later prove to be a critical decision. David's brother Nathan visited our office rarely, but when he did, his jealousy was palpable. With 2 failed startups behind him and constant financial support from his parents, Nathan seemed to resent our success and partnership. "Must be nice having everything handed to you," he once muttered after too many drinks at a company holiday party, though nothing had been handed to either of us. We had worked through graduate school, built our reputations through talent and persistence, and risked everything to launch our own company. Patricia, Nathan's wife, was polite but distant, always watching Marcus for cues on how to behave toward me. She had never worked outside the home and seemed to view my professional partnership with David as somehow inappropriate, often making comments about women who couldn't be satisfied with traditional roles. Life was following our carefully planned trajectory until David began experiencing chest pains that wouldn't subside. Initially, we attributed them to work stress and the intense schedule we were maintaining to secure our first major enterprise client. When over-the-counter medications failed to provide relief, I insisted he see a cardiologist, never imagining the diagnosis that would shatter our world. The doctor identified a rare genetic heart condition called hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, a thickening of the heart muscle that had likely been present since birth. Like a ticking time bomb, it had waited silently until that moment to make its presence known. Surgery was recommended, but 3 days before the procedure, while reviewing client presentations in our home office, David collapsed. The cardiac arrest was massive, sending him into a coma from which doctors warned he might never wake. For 18 days, I lived in the hospital, sleeping in an uncomfortable chair beside his bed, speaking to him constantly about our company, our projects, our future, clinging to hope despite the increasingly somber expressions of the medical staff. Marcus and Patricia visited daily, but maintained a strange formality with me, as though we were merely acquaintances sharing a waiting room rather than family united in grief and hope. When David briefly regained consciousness on the 19th day, his words were slurred but urgent. "Protect what we built," he whispered, squeezing my hand with surprising strength. "Everything's ours together. Don't let them take it." Before drifting back into unconsciousness, those were the last coherent words he spoke to me. The following morning, his condition deteriorated rapidly, and by afternoon, despite the medical team's frantic efforts, I watched the monitors flatline, signaling the end of the life we had built together. The following days passed in a blur of funeral arrangements, paperwork, and a grief so profound it felt physical. I moved through the necessary tasks on autopilot, barely registering the whispered conversations between Marcus and Nathan that halted when I approached, or the way Patricia avoided making eye contact during the funeral planning. Exhaustion overwhelmed me as I prepared for the service, looking forward to returning to work where David's presence still felt tangible in every line of code and design element. I'll never forget arriving at our office building the Monday after David's funeral to discover my key card had been deactivated. At first, I thought it was a simple oversight by building security, but when I approached the reception desk, the usually friendly guard avoided my eyes. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Rodriguez," he said uncomfortably, "but I've been instructed that you no longer have access to the TechFlow offices." Before I could process this information fully, the elevator doors opened to reveal Marcus, his expression cold and triumphant as he approached the reception area. "Emma," he said my name like an accusation. "We've been expecting you." Behind him, I glimpsed Nathan and Patricia in what had been our main conference room, methodically packing David's awards and the original prototype hardware into cardboard boxes labeled Martinez Family Property. The reality of what was happening hit me like a physical blow. "What are you doing?" I managed to ask, my voice barely audible as shock constricted my throat. Marcus straightened his shoulders, his chin lifting in that imperious way that had always signaled conflict during family gatherings. "This company belongs to the Martinez family now," he announced as though reciting a fact as indisputable as gravity. "David is gone, and you're no longer welcome here." Nathan appeared in the hallway holding a document that he thrust toward me. "This is David's will," he stated, watching my reaction closely. "Made before your marriage, it leaves his business interests to his family." The paper trembled in my hands as I quickly scanned it, noting the date from 8 years ago, well before our relationship had even begun. "This isn't valid," I protested, my designer's eye noticing immediately that several pages appeared to be missing. "We updated our wills after incorporating the company. My name is on all the business documents. We're equal partners." "If there's an updated will, where is it?" Marcus interrupted, his voice dripping with skepticism. "Convenient that no one has seen this supposed new document." Nathan stepped closer, his expression a mixture of rehearsed sympathy and poorly concealed satisfaction. "Look, Emma, we all know the truth. You married into success and opportunity. David was the genius behind TechFlow. You were just support staff. Now that he's gone, the gravy train ends." The accusation was so wildly inaccurate, so contrary to the reality of our partnership, that I couldn't immediately formulate a response. Before I could gather my thoughts, Marcus twisted the knife deeper. "If you'd given him children, perhaps things would be different," he said, each word calculated to inflict maximum pain. "But you didn't even provide the family with heirs. What purpose did you serve exactly?" Through the glass walls of our office, I noticed several of our employees watching the confrontation with obvious discomfort. The humiliation burned as hot as my grief. "You have 1 hour to collect any personal items," Marcus continued, consulting his watch as though timing a minor inconvenience. "1 box, nothing more. The rest will be inventoried as family property." "This is my company," I said, finding my voice at last. "You have no right." "I have every right as David's father," Marcus cut in. And if you're not gone in 1 hour, I'll call security and have you removed for trespassing." The word, trespassing, echoed in my mind as I mechanically moved through what had been our shared office space, grabbing personal items while Patricia watched from the doorway, presumably to ensure I didn't take anything Marcus had deemed Martinez property. My design portfolios disappeared from my hands as Nathan declared them company intellectual property. The prototype user interface mockups David and I had created together during our honeymoon were confiscated by Marcus himself. In 1 hour, I filled a single cardboard box with personal photos, my coffee mug, and a few items of clothing I kept in the office for late working nights. My professional certifications, my design equipment, even my laptop containing years of work, all remained in the office as I was escorted out by building security exactly 58 minutes after arriving for what I thought would be my first day back. That night I sat in my car in a parking garage, unable to process the magnitude of what had happened. I alternated between sobbing and staring blankly at the concrete walls, trying to understand how I had lost not only my husband but also our shared business, our employees who depended on us, and apparently my status as a person deserving of basic professional respect, all within the space of 1 week. When morning came, the shock had begun to give way to a hollow feeling of absolute abandonment. Not only had I lost David, but I had also lost our company, our shared vision, and the team we had built together. As dawn broke over the parking garage, I realized I was experiencing professional homelessness for the first time in my life, with only my personal savings and a single box of belongings to my name. When the morning light became too harsh to ignore, I called Jessica, my best friend since college, and the maid of honor at our wedding. Her immediate response, "I'm coming to get you right now. Text me your location," was the first moment of pure human kindness I'd experienced since David collapsed in our home office. Within 30 minutes, she arrived, took one look at my disheveled state, and enveloped me in a hug that finally broke the numbness encasing me. "You're staying with me," she said, brooking no argument as she loaded my solitary box into her trunk. "Then we're getting you a lawyer." Jessica's spare bedroom became my refuge as we navigated the bewildering aftermath of both grief and professional displacement. The following day, she accompanied me to a business attorney named Victoria Chun, who specialized in partnership disputes. Victoria listened to my story with increasing concern, reviewing the incorporation documents I had saved on my personal cloud storage. "Mrs. Rodriguez," she said, her voice reflecting a confidence I hadn't heard from any professional in weeks, "what your in-laws have done constitutes not just a moral failing, but potentially criminal behavior. The corporate structure clearly shows you as an equal partner. Without proper legal proceedings, they cannot simply take control of the company." Victoria took my case on a contingency basis, recognizing that the evidence supported a straightforward claim despite my current financial limitations. "We'll need affidavits from employees and clients who can verify your role in the company," she advised, helping me create a comprehensive list of potential witnesses. "And we should immediately freeze all business accounts to prevent them from liquidating assets." That afternoon, I contacted our lead developer, Marcus Kim, who had worked closely with both David and me for 3 years. His response was immediate and supportive. "Emma, I've been trying to reach you for days," he said, sounding genuinely distressed. "David's father showed up at the office claiming he was taking over operations. He fired half the team and told clients you were no longer with the company." None of us knew what to believe. Marcus Kim's revelation that the Martinez family had already begun dismantling our workforce confirmed their pattern of appropriating everything connected to David. "I never believed for a second that you and David hadn't made arrangements," Marcus continued. "You two were too careful, too professional to leave things unsettled." Over the next week, I reconnected with clients and business partners who remembered me as an integral part of TechFlow's success. "You designed our entire user interface," confirmed Sarah Chen, the CEO of our biggest client. "I specifically remember negotiating contract terms with you directly. The idea that you were just support staff is ridiculous." Sarah and 4 other major clients agreed to provide affidavits detailing my central role in their projects and the company's operations. Victoria assembled a comprehensive record proving my financial contributions to the company, my role in product development, and my partnership status in all legal documents. She also secured statements from our accountant confirming my active role in financial management, further establishing my status as a true co-owner rather than merely David's wife. Our web developer, Tom Bradley, contacted me through a mutual connection, offering to provide technical evidence about the company's intellectual property. "Emma, you designed 70% of our user interfaces," he said when we met at a cafe far from our office building. "Your fingerprints are all over our code base. I have commit logs going back 3 years showing your contributions." Through careful research, Victoria identified multiple legal grounds for our case: my clear partnership rights as documented in corporate filings, my substantial financial contributions creating an equity interest, the implications of corporate theft in the family's seizure of business assets, and potential civil claims for interference with business relationships and intentional infliction of emotional distress. "We'll start with an emergency injunction to prevent further disposal of company assets," Victoria explained as we prepared our filing. "Then a temporary restraining order to restore your access while we sort out ownership issues." While the legal strategy took shape, I finally began attending grief counseling sessions, recognizing that my trauma was compounded, not just the loss of David, but the violent severing of my connection to our shared professional life and vision. "You're experiencing complicated grief exacerbated by secondary trauma," my therapist explained. "The normal grieving process has been interrupted by an acute crisis that prevents closure." Through therapy, I began separating my grief for David from my anger toward his family, allowing myself to mourn him properly while still fighting for our shared legacy. Using screenshots from our company website, social media posts, and client testimonials, I created a detailed record of my professional contributions to TechFlow, demonstrating my central role in everything from product design to client relations. Victoria added this documentation to our growing file of evidence. Meanwhile, I reached out to David's college friends, many of whom had worked in tech, and understood the nature of our partnership. Several responded with supportive messages and offers to testify about David's frequently expressed pride in our collaboration and his frustration with his father's dismissive attitude toward my work. With Victoria's guidance, I created a comprehensive timeline of events following David's death, documenting each interaction with his family, each discovered change to company operations, and each public statement they had made about my role. This chronology revealed the systematic nature of their campaign to disinherit and discredit me, transforming what might have seemed like isolated incidents into clear evidence of a coordinated effort to steal my business interests. As our case solidified, Victoria prepared me for the public nature of our legal battle. "The Martinez family has been creating their narrative unopposed for weeks," she noted. "When we file these motions, expect them to escalate their attacks on your character. We need to be ready with clear, factual responses that focus on the legal issues rather than emotion." Despite her warning, I felt stronger than I had since David's collapse, empowered by purpose and the knowledge that I was fighting not just for material possessions, but for the recognition of our partnership and the company we had built together. "David trusted me to protect what we created," I told Victoria as we finalized our initial filings. "I won't let him down." The sheriff delivered our legal papers to the Martinez family on a Tuesday morning, exactly 37 days after David's death. Victoria had warned me not to be present to avoid potential confrontation, but Marcus Kim texted me a play-by-play as security arrived at the TechFlow offices. "Your father-in-law turned white when he read the injunction," he reported. "He's been on the phone nonstop since the sheriff left." Our initial hearing was scheduled for the following Friday, giving the Martinez family's attorney minimal time to prepare a response to our comprehensive filing. Victoria and I arrived at the courthouse to find Marcus, Patricia, and Nathan already seated in the front row, their expressions ranging from Nathan's visible nervousness to Marcus's rigid indignation. Their attorney, a silver-haired man named Robert Stern, exuded confidence as he nodded dismissively in our direction. "Don't worry about the theatrics," Victoria murmured as we took our seats. "Stern specializes in representing wealthy families in business disputes, but he's used to intimidating under-resourced claimants. We're fully prepared." Judge Patricia Williams, a veteran of the business court with a reputation for no-nonsense efficiency, reviewed our filings silently before looking up at both legal teams. "This case appears straightforward despite the voluminous filings," she stated, fixing Stern with a pointed stare. "Partnership agreements and corporate structure are black-letter law, Mr. Stern. What exactly is your client's position regarding the documented corporate ownership?" Stern launched into a convoluted argument about David's true intentions as evidenced by his outdated will, claiming I had manipulated him into creating false partnership documents during our marriage. When Judge Williams asked for evidence of manipulation, Stern faltered visibly. "We have statements from family members regarding the deceased's expressions of concern about his wife's business and experience," he offered weakly. Victoria pounced immediately, presenting corporate filings showing my equal ownership stake, bank records showing my substantial financial contributions, and affidavits from neutral third parties including clients, employees, and business partners. As each piece of evidence was introduced, Marcus's expression hardened while beside him Nathan began whispering urgently to their attorney. The turning point came when Victoria presented David's laptop, which our IT specialist had recovered from the office before the family could seize it. The laptop contained months of emails between David and me discussing business strategy, design decisions, and partnership plans that made our equal collaboration undeniable. "Mr. and Mrs. Martinez, you created user interfaces together." One email read, "Emma's market insights have been invaluable to our product development." Another message, sent just 2 weeks before David's death, discussed our plans to expand the design team under my leadership. Judge Williams listened to arguments for less than 3 hours before issuing her preliminary ruling. "Based on the clear evidence before this court, I am granting an immediate injunction preventing further changes to TechFlow Solutions operations pending resolution of ownership issues," she announced. "Furthermore, I am ordering immediate restoration of Mrs. Rodriguez's access to company facilities and accounts." She fixed Marcus with a stern gaze. "Mr. Martinez, this court takes a very dim view of self-help business seizures under any circumstances, but particularly against a recent widow. Your actions appear both legally and morally indefensible based on the evidence presented today." As the judge spoke, Marcus's face contorted with rage. The moment Judge Williams called for a 15-minute recess, Marcus stood and pointed at me from across the courtroom. "You manipulated him from the beginning," he shouted, his voice echoing against the wood-paneled walls. "You are never worthy of the Martinez name." Court officers stepped forward immediately, but the damage to his credibility was already done. Victoria squeezed my arm supportively as Stern hurriedly escorted his client from the courtroom, his public outburst undermining any portrayal of him as a reasonable grieving father. That afternoon, accompanied by a court-appointed officer and a locksmith, I returned to TechFlow for the first time in over 5 weeks. Stepping through the familiar glass doors with my restored access card, I was shocked by the extent of the changes. Office layouts had been rearranged, equipment relocated, and walls repainted in colors Marcus had apparently preferred. More disturbing were the gaps where valuable equipment had clearly been removed, empty desks where high-end computers had stood, blank walls where our awards and certificates had hung, and missing servers from our development room. Victoria had anticipated this and brought a digital forensics specialist who photographed each room systematically, documenting the alterations and missing items. "They've been busy," the specialist noted grimly as we moved through the office. "I'm seeing evidence of at least $150,000 in removed equipment and software licenses based on your original inventory list." In what had been our main conference room, I found evidence that the Martinez family had actually been operating a different business from our space, legal documents for Nathan's new consulting venture, marketing materials for Patricia's craft business, and financial records showing they had been billing clients using TechFlow's infrastructure while excluding me from operations. When confronted with the evidence of missing equipment at our follow-up hearing, Marcus claimed the items were family investments that had merely been relocated for safekeeping during the ownership dispute. Judge Williams ordered a full accounting of all removed property within 72 hours, with significant penalties for noncompliance. After that hearing, our former office manager, Linda Chin, approached me in the courthouse hallway, while Marcus, was engaged with their attorney. "Emma," she said hesitantly, glancing over her shoulder, "I need to talk to you privately." Later that day, over coffee at a discreet location, Linda revealed the extent of Marcus's methodical campaign. He started planning this the day David was hospitalized, she admitted, tears streaming down her face. "He told Nathan and Patricia that you would try to take Martinez's family property and that they needed to protect David's legacy from you." According to Linda, Marcus had already consulted with Stern before David died, strategizing how to challenge any business ownership claims I might make. "He has a storage unit full of equipment from your office," Linda confessed. "Computers, servers, design tablets, anything he thought was valuable. He's been telling people they need to rescue Martinez's family investments before you could liquidate them." The day after Linda's confession, I began receiving anonymous messages on LinkedIn calling me a gold digger and family destroyer. Victoria immediately documented these communications as evidence of ongoing harassment. Meanwhile, the local tech news website published a detailed article about the case, interviewing several sources, including our former clients who spoke passionately about my central role in TechFlow's success. As public opinion began shifting, several industry professionals contacted me with supportive messages and stories about how proudly David had spoken of our partnership. Marcus's desperation became evident when he attempted to claim in a subsequent filing that David had been mentally compromised for months before his death, suggesting our partnership documents reflected diminished capacity. Victoria immediately countered with David's medical records and professional accomplishments during the period in question, including successful client presentations and product launches that clearly demonstrated his mental acuity. During Marcus's deposition, Victoria methodically exposed contradictions in his testimony, particularly regarding his knowledge of our business arrangements. "Mr. Martinez, you testified earlier that you believed your son was the sole owner of TechFlow Solutions, correct?" Victoria asked. "Yes, David created and funded everything," Marcus insisted. "Were you aware that Emma Rodriguez contributed 50% of the startup capital from her separate consulting funds?" Victoria asked, sliding bank statements across the table. "Or that she designed the user interfaces that generated 80% of your revenue?" Marcus's composure cracked as Victoria presented document after document contradicting his claims. Most damaging was evidence Victoria had uncovered through discovery, emails from Marcus to David dating back for years, repeatedly suggesting he find a proper business partner who understood technology and stop letting Emma distract from serious work. Through security camera footage from our office building, we discovered visual evidence of Nathan and Patricia removing equipment and files late at night during the first week after they had seized control. The timestamp clearly showed them loading servers and computers into a rental truck at 2:47 a.m., hardly the actions of people who believed they were legally entitled to those assets. As our case strengthened daily, I found unexpected confidence in standing up to the family that had tried to erase me. During a chance encounter with Nathan at a coffee shop near the courthouse, I maintained eye contact as he attempted to intimidate me. "You won't win against us," he muttered. "The Martinez family takes care of their own." David was taking care of his own, I replied steadily. His choice was me. The flash of uncertainty in Nathan's eyes told me he was beginning to recognize the inevitability of their defeat. The final piece fell into place when Victoria received an anonymous tip about equipment being sold through online marketplaces. With a court order, we discovered that Nathan had been liquidating TechFlow assets through various auction sites, using proceeds to fund his own competing business venture. After 4 exhausting months of legal proceedings, Judge Williams issued her final ruling in a 42-page decision that vindicated my position on every significant point. This court finds that Emma Rodriguez is the rightful co-owner of TechFlow Solutions by virtue of documented partnership agreements, substantial financial contributions, and equal participation in business operations, she wrote. Furthermore, the court found that Marcus, Patricia, and Nathan Martinez had engaged in a deliberate and unconscionable campaign to deprive Mrs. Rodriguez of her legal business interests during a period of bereavement. The judge's language became particularly pointed when addressing the family's conduct. The defendant's actions in seizing control of business operations, removing equipment, and attempting to assert ownership through self-help methods rather than legal procedures represents a shocking disregard for both corporate law and basic human decency. Their subsequent attempts to justify these actions through unsubstantiated claims about the deceased's intentions are contradicted by substantial documentary evidence and appear designed primarily to retroactively legitimize their improper conduct. Beyond confirming my ownership of TechFlow, the ruling ordered comprehensive restitution for all removed equipment and lost business opportunities, with monetary damages assessed for any assets that could not be recovered. The court appointed a special master to oversee this process, preventing the Martinez family from further manipulating the situation. The judgment included substantial financial penalties: $95,000 for wrongful interference with business operations, $60,000 for emotional distress, and an additional $180,000 for the value of missing equipment and lost contracts that the Martinez family claimed they could not locate. Judge Williams also took the unusual step of awarding full attorney's fees, citing the vexatious and unconscionable nature of the defendant's actions and legal positions. The week following the court's decision, my business bank accounts, which Marcus had frozen, were finally restored with interest penalties paid by the Martinez family for their improper actions. The insurance claim on David's life, which the family had unsuccessfully challenged, was also processed, providing financial security that allowed me to focus on rebuilding rather than merely surviving. Public sentiment, which Marcus had initially manipulated to isolate me, shifted dramatically as details of the case became known. Several business associates who had believed his characterization of me approached with awkward but seemingly genuine apologies. "We should have known better than to listen to office gossip," admitted Robertson, who had organized several industry networking events. "You and David were always so obviously equal partners." With Jessica's help, I finally moved back into our TechFlow offices, though returning to the space filled with memories of David brought both comfort and fresh waves of grief. A professional assessment revealed the extent of damage caused during the Martinez family's occupation: scratched floors from moving equipment, damaged network infrastructure, and even deliberate destruction of our custom-designed collaboration spaces. The court-ordered return of equipment created a final confrontation with Marcus, who arrived at the office with a truck containing items the special master had identified as belonging to TechFlow. As he supervised the unloading, his expression remained stony, his posture rigid with resentment. When the workers finished, he approached me in the lobby, a small box in his hands. "These are some of David's personal items from his desk," he said, his voice stripped of its usual imperious tone. "The court says they belong to you now." As I accepted the box, meeting his gaze steadily, Marcus seemed to deflate slightly. "You've won," he acknowledged, the words clearly painful for him. "You've taken everything that mattered to our family." "I haven't taken anything, Marcus," I replied quietly. "I'm simply keeping what David and I built together, what we always intended to share." He turned away without response, but there was something different in his bearing. Not acceptance, perhaps, but recognition of the immutability of his defeat. The most surprising development came 3 weeks later when Nathan contacted me requesting a private meeting. In a neutral coffee shop downtown, he sat across from me with an unfamiliar hesitancy. "I need to apologize," he began awkwardly. "I followed Dad's lead because I always have, but watching this case unfold, seeing the evidence. David talked to me about the business partnership at Christmas. He was explicit about you being equal partners. I should have spoken up when Dad started claiming otherwise." While his admission came far too late to prevent months of suffering, it represented the first acknowledgement from any family member that their actions had been based on deliberate misrepresentation rather than genuine misunderstanding. Nathan also revealed that his marriage to Patricia was ending, partly due to her discomfort with the family's behavior during the dispute. "She kept saying we cross lines that decent people don't cross," he admitted. She was right. The business community's support manifested in unexpected ways. Tech companies that had initially distanced themselves from me based on Marcus's narrative now made gestures of reconciliation. The CEO of our former cloud hosting provider brought a proposal for expanded services with a note reading, "David always spoke of you as the creative genius behind TechFlow. We should have remembered that." Most moving was the weekend when several of our former employees organized a restoration project for the damaged areas of the office. 12 people arrived with tools, equipment, and determination to erase the physical evidence of that painful period. As they repaired network cables, replaced damaged furniture, and reinstalled our collaboration software, they shared stories about David, gradually transforming the work from an act of repair to a living memorial. During the cleanup, we discovered several hidden backup drives and project files that Marcus had attempted to destroy rather than return. Tucked behind server racks, sealed inside equipment cases, and stored in the backs of desk drawers, each recovery felt like reclaiming another fragment of our business legacy. Through the Special Master's investigation, we also traced several pieces of expensive equipment that Marcus had distributed to extended family members under the guise of preserving Martinez's family investments. Most relatives, now aware of the court's findings, cooperatively returned these items, many expressing embarrassment at their unwitting participation in Marcus's scheme. The final symbolic act in reclaiming TechFlow came when I hired an IT security firm to completely overhaul our access systems, creating new passwords and security protocols that erased any possibility of unauthorized access. As the technicians worked, I walked through each room, removing the last traces of the Martinez family's brief occupation and restoring the space to reflect the company David and I had created together. Standing in our main conference room that evening, holding the new master access card in my palm, I felt David's presence more strongly than at any time since his death, not as a ghost, but as the embodiment of the business and vision we had built through love, partnership, and mutual respect. For the first time since his collapse in our home office, I worked late without anxiety, finally secure in the knowledge that our shared legacy would endure. 1 year after David's death, I stood in our redesigned TechFlow offices, watching the morning light filter through the windows overlooking the city where we had started our journey together. The anniversary brought grief, of course, a grief that I now understood would always be part of me, but it also brought a sense of accomplishment and peace that had seemed impossible during those dark weeks when I was locked out of our own company. The business had not merely recovered but flourished. Our team had grown to 15 employees, all of whom understood and respected the partnership David and I had created. My work had taken on new meaning, not just as professional success, but as a tribute to the vision we had shared. 6 months after the court's final ruling, I used part of the settlement funds to establish the David Martinez Innovation Scholarship at our alma mater, supporting students who demonstrated collaborative skills and innovative thinking in technology development. Each year, the scholarship would fund projects that combined technical excellence with human-centered design, carrying forward David's passion for technology that truly served people. The announcement of this scholarship generated an unexpected letter from Patricia, who had remained largely silent throughout the legal proceedings. "While I cannot speak for my husband," she wrote, "I wish to express my personal regret for actions taken in grief that caused additional pain. The scholarship honors our son's values in a way I failed to do." Though brief and careful in its wording, the note suggested at least one member of the Martinez family had begun reflecting on their behavior. Perhaps the most surprising development in my journey was the friendship that gradually formed with Linda Chen, our former office manager. Initially reaching out to return personal items she had saved from Marcus's purge, she became an unexpected ally and eventually a trusted business advisor. "Being complicit in what they did to you was the worst professional mistake I ever made," she confided during one of our regular strategy meetings. "Watching how they treated you after David died finally showed me what kind of people I was enabling." Her perspective on the family dynamics proved invaluable to my healing process, helping me understand that their behavior reflected long-established patterns of control and manipulation rather than specific rejection of me. My relationship with Jessica deepened through the crucible of crisis. The friend who had unhesitatingly offered her spare room during my darkest hours now served on TechFlow's advisory board, bringing her marketing expertise to our growing company. "David would haunt me if I let you become a workaholic hermit," she would joke, dragging me to industry conferences and networking events that gradually reintroduced professional community and possibility into my life. Weekend trips with Jessica and the close-knit circle of friends who had stood by me became essential rituals of reconnection with a life beyond grief and legal battles. On a rainy Tuesday, 8 months after the court ruling, I encountered Marcus unexpectedly in the elevator of our office building. He stood frozen as our eyes met, clearly contemplating which floor to exit on. Instead of the anger or anxiety such meetings had previously triggered, I felt a strange calmness as I nodded acknowledgement before he hurriedly exited 2 floors early. The power he had held over my emotional state had dissolved, replaced by something approaching pity for a man whose controlling nature had cost him not only his relationship with his son during David's life, but also his standing in the business community he had once dominated. 3 weeks later, a package arrived containing a handwritten letter from Nathan. After much reflection and therapy, he wrote, I've begun to understand the toxic patterns in our family that I'm determined not to perpetuate. Our treatment of you after David's death exposed a foundation I can no longer ignore. While his words couldn't erase the months of suffering his actions had caused, they affirmed my growing understanding that families are defined by choices and behavior rather than merely by blood or legal ties. This recognition helped me appreciate the professional family I had constructed around myself, employees, clients, and collaborators who had demonstrated loyalty and integrity when it mattered most. By the time spring arrived, I had established new traditions in the company while preserving meaningful connections to David. His original business plans remained framed in our conference room, but I had expanded our services to better serve current market needs. His office had been respectfully converted into a collaboration space, while I kept select personal items with special memories. TechFlow breathed differently now, still honoring our shared history while acknowledging. You've done what David would have wanted, he said simply. You've made this place fully yours while keeping him present. His observation precisely articulated what I had intuitively worked toward during the healing process. The business attorney who had helped me secure comprehensive partnership agreements and succession planning remarked that my case had become something of a teaching example in her practice. Your experience has motivated dozens of entrepreneurs to properly document their business relationships, she told me. Your willingness to share your story has likely prevented untold suffering for others. This unexpected impact gave meaning to the painful journey, transforming it from merely personal trauma to a cautionary tale with practical value for the business community. On difficult days when grief resurfaced with unexpected intensity, I would sit in David's former office, now our innovation lab, reading through our old project notes and product development discussions. These moments no longer felt like drowning in sorrow, but rather like conversations continuing across a different kind of distance. The greatest lesson I carried forward was the recognition of my own resilience. The woman who had stood shocked outside her own company, watching strangers dismantle everything she had built, had discovered reservoirs of strength she never knew existed. That strength now informed every aspect of my life, from business negotiations to personal boundaries to a gradually reawakening sense of possibility for the future. TechFlow's success story became well known in our industry, not just for our innovative products but for the principles of partnership and integrity that guided our operations. Job applicants often mentioned our company culture as a primary reason for their interest, understanding that we valued collaboration and respect above hierarchy and politics. During a particularly successful product launch 18 months after David's death, I stood before our team celebrating another major client acquisition. Looking around the room at the talented professionals who had chosen to build their careers with us, I felt a profound sense of gratitude, not just for our business success, but for the community we had created. Later that evening, as I locked up the office and walked to my car, I reflected on the journey from that devastating morning when my key card was deactivated to this moment of triumph and security. The path had been longer and more difficult than anything I could have imagined, but it had led to something stronger and more meaningful than what David and I had originally built. My phone buzzed with a text from Jessica. Proud of you, boss lady. David would be amazed at what you've accomplished. I smiled, knowing she was right. David would indeed be amazed, not just at TechFlow's growth, but at my transformation from grieving widow to confident business leader. The drive home took me past the courthouse, where Judge Williams had vindicated our partnership and restored my rights. I no longer felt anger toward the Martinez family, but rather a deep appreciation for the legal system that had ultimately protected the innocent and punished those who had acted with malicious intent. At home in the house David and I had shared, I poured myself a glass of wine and stepped onto the back deck overlooking the small garden where we had often discussed business ideas and future plans. The space had become my favorite place for reflection, where I felt most connected to both our shared past and my evolving future. As I sat in the gathering dusk, I thought about the email I had received that morning from a young entrepreneur who had read about my case online. She was facing similar family interference in her business and wanted advice on protecting herself legally. Tomorrow I would connect her with Victoria Chen and share the lessons I had learned about the importance of documentation, the value of trusted advisors, and the necessity of fighting for what you know is right. My story had become bigger than my personal experience. It had become a testament to the power of perseverance, the importance of proper legal protections, and the possibility of rebuilding even after devastating loss. Every entrepreneur who read about my case and took steps to protect their business, every widow who found courage to fight for her rights, every person who refused to be intimidated by family bullies, they all became part of the legacy David and I had created together. The night air carried the scent of jasmine from our neighbor's garden, reminding me of the evening David had proposed in this same spot, talking about our dreams for the future and the company we would build together. He couldn't have known then that our partnership would survive even his death, that the business we created would become a beacon for others facing similar challenges. As stars began appearing in the darkening sky, I raised my wine glass in a silent toast to David, to our partnership, to the battle I had won, and to the future I was still writing. The Martinez family had tried to erase me from David's story, but instead they had helped me discover my own strength and create a legacy that was both ours and uniquely mine. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, and new ways to honor the partnership that had started it all. But tonight, sitting in the peace of our garden with tech flow thriving and my future secure, I felt the deepest satisfaction I had known since losing David. I had not only survived their attempt to destroy me, I had built something better than they had ever imagined possible. Have you ever been forced to fight for what was rightfully yours during a time of grief? Did you discover strength you didn't know you had? Please share your stories in the comments below. If this journey of resilience and justice resonated with you, hit that subscribe button and like this video. Your support helps me continue sharing these difficult but important stories of overcoming life's most challenging moments. Remember that partnerships, whether in marriage or business, are ultimately defined by respect, equality, and shared vision, not merely by family approval or traditional expectations. Thank you for accompanying me through this chapter of my story, and I wish you the courage to fight for your rights and the wisdom to protect what you've built, no matter what challenges life may bring your way.